We have a good tech person, and we have a wonderful new system here for projecting onto our screen. But the bad news is that I don't have an adapter for the HDMI cable for my laptop. You're actually going to what? Turn that off, okay. So, bear with me. This would be a lot better if I'm going to have to stay back here and have all these notes. It would be a lot better if I had my presentation for you. So anyway, today I want to talk about stewardship. And you can unplug it probably. In the concept of we are stewards of, try to hold it straight up and down so that it doesn't have a reflection. And then walk up close to those guys. You can row. The title of that first slide is We Are Stewards. I'm going to start today, we're going to move faster than I thought we were, with just some words on stewardship from people that are a lot smarter than I am on the subject. And I hope that the words that we talk about will help us understand what's required of us. I promise that I'm not going to talk about giving money today, at all. Not at all. The only thing I'll say about giving money is that I won't say anything about giving money. A few years ago, my volunteer work here at Zumbro has been primarily in this room and with worship and arts. I've also talked in some small groups and panels on my faith and on grief and other assorted subjects. And one day I was talking to Pastor Jason about what that meant to me and how putting into words a presentation about my faith helped me crystallize what I really thought about my faith. And it helped me understand and actually grab onto my faith, which can be kind of elusive for me. And we were standing in the parking lot in front of the church, and he said, "That's the Holy Spirit, Enid." And that took me back just a little bit, because I didn't expect him to tell me that, I guess. I don't know why. But the moral of the story is that you get so much more when you reach out and do things. So, are these words familiar? Our journey of faith leads us, I'm going to read it just in case I make it. Our journey of faith leads us to build bridges. Are you on the second slide now?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
He's going to listen. To build bridges of understanding and peace, to reach out in compassion and to share the hope of Jesus. That's all about stewardship. Thanks be to God. Yeah. So when we talk about stewardship, the first thing that comes into our mind when we're sitting in this building is filling out that card, and somebody talking to us in October or November about filling out that card and doing and giving back. But when I think about stewardship, I think about nurturing. I think about growing something. I think about protecting something. What are you a steward of? We're stewards of so many things. And supporting something. A few months ago, Adam Copeland from the seminary, next slide. Adam Copeland from the seminary, who works in stewardship at the seminary, was here. And in order to prepare for this, I've been reading out of this little book that is an editor. Adam Copeland is the editor of this collection of essays on different kinds of stewardship. And it's called Beyond the Offering Plate, a holistic approach to stewardship. And he writes in his introduction, "I understand stewardship to be a lived theology, founded on the claim that all resources begin with and belong to God. Practicing stewardship reshapes how Christians manage all resources, including our money, materials, and relationships. Stewardship is a lived concept, most often resulting in sharing that surprises, compassion, and complicates, and love that inspires." And C.S. Lewis wrote, "What are we?" Good. wrote, every faculty you have, your power of thinking or of moving your limbs from moment to moment is given you by God. If you devoted every moment of your life exclusively to his service, you could not give him anything that was not, in a sense, his own already. And then there's Hugh Weichselbaum, the Executive Director of Institute of Faith, Work, and Economics. As Christians in the 21st century, we need to embrace a larger biblical view of stewardship, which goes beyond church budgets or building projects. Though important, it connects to everything we do to what God is doing in the world. We need to be faithful stewards of all God has given us within the opportunities presented through his providence to glorify him, serve the common good, and further his kingdom. So, what do we take care of? What do we take care of? Anybody?
The earth.
The earth. Relationships. Our kids. Each other. Our bodies. Time. We are also stewards of our time. I've had a couple days this fall where I got up in the morning, did all the things I normally do when I get up. I sat down and I just wasted a day. And all of a sudden it's 3 o'clock, Ben's coming home, and I'm thinking, I didn't do anything today. I didn't use my time for anything. So how do we spend our time?
I beg to differ with you. You took care of yourself that day.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I don't know, the things I did during that day, I can't imagine that taking care of myself couldn't have been doing something better. Sometimes you need to just not do something, I guess. So, Mary Ann McKibben Dana writes, it's absolutely essential, I believe, to be intentional about how we live our days. How much activity we're willing to pack into our lives, whether we're attentive to people around us or perpetually distracted by buzzes and dings and our own monkey mind. Our time can be as much a treasure as our finances. Can the church talk about calendars as theological documents? What do we give our time to? Do we intentionally make time for spiritual practices, or do we simply hope that will happen? And we take care of relationships, someone said that. What are we doing to protect and grow relationships we have with our family and our friends? It takes time and intention to sustain a healthy relationship. It takes two. Sometimes you say, well, you know, it's the same distance from here to Eau Claire as it is from Eau Claire to here. Why don't they visit me? Well, why don't you visit them? It's the same phone call. Why do I always have to be the one to call? Because they can't. Because maybe that's your responsibility. And relationships don't occur if you don't work at them. What about our stewardship of work? Are we doing everything we can to help our employers? Are we doing everything we can to help our employees and their goals? Work is integral to human existence, writes Kathleen Cahalan. Anybody know that woman? Anyway. As creatures made in God's image, our work is good and blessed when it cooperates with God's purposes for the world. God blesses us with the capacities to do good work. We work for subsistence. We work to put food on our, I lost my slide, okay. On our table. We work to pay our mortgage. We work to pay our rent. We also work for other things. We also work to enhance our lives. We work for others. Many of our jobs are a form of service. And when we think of service, we think of hospitality, but we also think of legal services, and we think of medical services. We work to enhance our lives. It is socially valued, and if your work is socially valued and contributes to a person's sense of well-being, identity, and self-esteem. When we care for ourselves by living fully into our callings, we are also stewards of God's creation. I've had 3 different careers, and I don't know that, and one of them was very important. I taught English as a second language. That was really a calling for me. One of them was working with companies that put together incentive travel programs for big sales winners. And I wasn't sure that was much of a calling, although I was very detail-oriented and I was really good at that job. And now I am making art, and it gives me joy and maybe other people, but mostly it's just fun. I don't know if it's very important, but if I can take a day off and look out the window all day, then I can make pretty things all day too, right? We take care of our history. Okay.
Question, I noticed that at Luther Seminary, that what used to be the Department of Stewardship is now the Department of Philanthropy. And I wonder what you think about that change in name.
Well, philanthropy, if we understand, well, that's very interesting, because I don't think of stewardship and philanthropy as being mutually inclusive. So I have to think about that for a while. But I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't know that. So philanthropy, showing our love out to people. And stewardship, I think of more as a kind of a protective and caring and nurturing. What about our history? We are stewards of our history. I have a family member who went through a period where it seemed like he might have been drinking too much. I wasn't sure. And in my in-laws, not my in-laws, in his, well, the other side of the family, my sister-in-law's, in-laws family, there was a history of alcoholism. And I felt like that history needed to be remembered and regarded with quite a bit of import, because he needed to know that this was in his history. So that's a medical history issue. If you know in your medical history that there's heart disease, you need to pay attention to that. If your family history is one of immigrants who came with nothing and built a faithful, happy, healthy family, you need to know that. You need to know what you come from. The good things and the bad things. And what am I doing to share that? Does Ben know his family history very well? What about my faith history? Ben does know my faith history, because we talk about that all the time. Physical health. We take our meds, we wear our glasses, we try to go to bed on time, we get up on time, I don't, but we get our annual checkups, we get our flu shots. So, well, we haven't. Here's the laundry. Some of it's clean, some of it's dirty. Our physical health, except for our family history and congenital things, is largely in our own hands. And what do we do to protect and nurture that? In Psalms 139, without God we would be nothing. God knit us and formed us, and in God we are wonderfully made. And in Acts 17:28, God gives us life and breath, gives life and breath to all things. In Him we live and move and have our being. And what about our mental health? We focus a lot on mental health in our immediate family. Jay's dad. Well, Jay's dad had mental health issues too, but Ben's dad had pretty severe depression, and his twin brother has severe depression. So it's something that we pay very close attention to. But also with the health of our mind, what are we doing? And in this group of people, there are only a few young people in this room. What are we doing to keep our minds growing, to keep our sense of curiosity filled, to work our minds? How is it that we are nurturing our mental health? And then what about our reputation? Is it important that we nurture our reputation? When you were younger, did your mother say, don't do anything that you, don't say anything, don't do anything that you don't want on the evening news? Or something similar. Well, now, what we say and do is very likely forever recorded. More so than it was even 20 years ago. Ask Judge Kavanaugh. If those things had happened now, we would have a record of what happened. And so it is a warning, an admonition to all of us, but maybe more so those who have a long history in front of them, that everything you say and do is recorded. And so I think as you nurture that understanding, it isn't just a leave it to Beaver, be good, you represent our family. It's also a way for us to say, I have a character that I want my character to be represented like this. And to remember that everything we do says something about who we are. We nurture our digital footprint more than ever. What are you doing? What in your digital footprint is it responsible? Are you taking care of that? Are you making yourself vulnerable to things that you don't want to be vulnerable to? And what is your digital footprint affect? How is your digital footprint left on yourself? In other words, I get a report on how many hours of screen time on my phone I have on average in the last week. And it varies quite a bit. But when I see that number creeping up, what is that doing to me? That's leaving a footprint probably deeper than I want it to, but not as deep as his. And when we nurture our talents, are you organized? Are you good at motivating people? Are you good at knitting, home repair, gardening, sewing, technology, teaching, listening, serving food? What are your talents? And what can you do to grow and use these talents? Can you develop new ones? We nurture our community. Wouldn't it be better if we had all these slides up there? We nurture our community. When we moved into our neighborhood, there were only 2 other houses, and that was other vacant lots. But as our neighborhood grew, when we saw people coming and looking at houses, I would try to meet them outside, stop their car, just say, I see you're looking at the house, and it's a great neighborhood. But what I did in I hope, a friendly way, was say, in this neighborhood, we take care of each other. We have a responsibility for each other. Our kids play with each other. We run in and out of each other's houses. We have bonfires in the evening together. We sit on each other's front porches. That's what our neighborhood is. And it wasn't a warning that if you come here, you have to behave this way. You want to be private, that's okay too. But and then after that, I didn't do anything different than anyone else in our neighborhood. But what kind of a neighborhood do we have?
Exactly what you described.
Yeah. We take care of each other. We know if there's a truck at the neighbor's house and they're on vacation, we call them and say, look, why is there a truck at your house? Should they be there? Our kids know that they can go into any house if they get home or if they're home alone and they feel endangered or something, they can go to another house. We are a family, and we nurture that. In 1 John chapter 13, it's written, the call to love God and neighbor helps us understand that spiritual disciplines are gifts of love, not acts of obligation. They are meant to be a way of loving the one who first loved us. This reveals a double gift of life in the Spirit. As we draw near to God in prayer, we find ourselves drawn closer to our neighbors. And as we reach out to our neighbors with love, we experience God reaching out with love for us. To love your neighbor with your heart is to desire full and abundant life for others. Think about that in the context of our current political situation and the neighbors to the south. and our neighbors across the world. To love your neighbor with your heart is to desire full and abundant life for them. To love your neighbors with your soul is to foster closer connections with others. To love your neighbor with your mind is to share with others in the pursuit of God's wisdom and truth. That's what I hope we do in this room. We nurture our faith and our spirituality. Your faith may be strong, its strengths may vary. You may feel spiritual but not religious. You may know a lot of people that feel spiritual but not religious. But what do you do to grow that? And if you feel spiritual but not religious, what disciplines do you have that grows that? That's where I start to disconnect with that SBNR phrase. What spiritual disciplines do you have in your life? There's prayer, participation in public worship. Speaking to the choir, right? Gratitude, fellowship in the community of faith while we're here. Self-examination, self-discipline, self-offering. David Gabriel writes, becoming better stewards of our spiritual gifts, which will require, among other things, recognizing the rich diversity of gifts that are found in this body of Christ and the great value of the various gifts God has given to each of us. And we are stewards of our environment. In Genesis 1:28 through 30, God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it. I give every green plant for food. So what are you doing for the environment? Whose responsibility is it? What is your role in ensuring a healthy ecosystem? What is your role in destroying the environment? How does your vote protect the environment? I can't stay away from that. We are all thinking about that right now. But I hope we take consideration as when we make our votes, that we think about what we are stewards of. As stewards of all creation, God calls on us to take responsibility for everything that has been given to us. So what can we give? The 3 T's, treasure, time, and talent. God loves a cheerful giver, but I'm not going to talk about money. In 2 Corinthians, it's written, and God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance, so that by always having enough of everything, you may share abundantly in every good work. As it is written, he scatters abroad, he gives to the poor, his righteousness endures forever. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way for your great generosity, which will produce thanksgiving to God through us. For the rendering of this ministry not only supplies the needs of the saints, but also overflows with many thanksgivings to God. So we're going to get into the exercise part of our presentation this morning. So if you want to set that down and hand out, we have many more than we need, one of these to each person. I want to ask you to think about the things that are important to you on 3 levels. Things that are important to you on a personal level, faith and health and your son, whatever, your wife. 3 things that are really important to you on a community level, and 3 things on a global level. And maybe I could get a volunteer to speed this process up, because I'd like us just to keep, if there's one other person not taking up the other side, thank you, Pastor Les. So on this little chart, we're going to think about this. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. You've heard that before. Is it family, friends, faith, work, entertainment? Entertainment is really important to me. Exercise, your hobby, your education, your environment, art, music, games, electronic games, board games, personal games, social media. Is play important to you? Are books important to you? Is language important to you? Politics, travel, spirituality, your home, your house, your yard, your garden. And on this sheet, if you don't have a pencil or a pen, then do this in your head. As a self-assessment, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So what are 3 things, if you don't have to say anything too personal, what are 3 things that are really important to you? Sleep. Especially for teenage boys, but food, especially for teenage boys. Friends, family, friends, fun. What else? Quiet time, respite. Nobody has important personal things that they want to share. Family? Oh, we already said that. A daily walk. What about in your community? What are 3 things that are important? I would say my neighborhood. I would say local politics. I would say the school system. Church. DMC development, maybe. It's important.
People that provide food for hungry
People
people.
who,
Agencies that-
yeah, like nonprofit agencies that are giving food and shelter and what about,
Organizations, usually nonprofit, that share with people in disasters and like the American Red Cross,
yeah,
Salvation Army.
Yeah.
Those are high priorities.
high priorities. Is your vehicle important to you personally? I like my car. Ben likes his legs. His legs are strong and they run really fast. What about globally? I mean, I think this seems like a pretty simple exercise, but if you really think about what are the most important things to me, globally, I mean, world peace is kind of a big thing, but our relationship with other nations is important, and we do have some control over that. Oh, I didn't change that. So, how much time do you devote to each of those things? Think about that. Actually, writing these things down does help you assess whether your stewardship of those things is right. We might say that it's really important to take care of the homeless, and at the same time think about, that might be politically incorrect here, I'm going to say it anyway, think about completely renovating our church. So, is that a good stewardship of funds? If a building project, which by the way I get really excited about because I like buildings and I like beautiful things, brings more people in, that's important. If that building project better serves our community that's here, that's important. Is it more important than ensuring that people have a place to live? Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. How much time do you devote to those things that are so important to you? And then the next part of that question is on the other side of your sheet. 3 personal things where you spend your most time. This is easier to answer. Work, cleaning your house, cooking for your family, sleeping, Let's eliminate sleep from this equation because we all need to sleep, although some of us could use more to take care of our bodies. So where do you spend the most of your time? And do those three things match up with the first three things you wrote? In your community, the three most important things. They're the three areas that you spend most of your time. Do they match up with the three things in your community that are most important to you? For global issues, what time do we spend on global issues? As individuals, not a ton. I'm not the president. I'm not a prime minister. I'm not a senator. I'm not a soldier. But how are we focusing any of our attention to the global issues? We may be working for the Red Cross. We may be volunteering for the Red Cross. That does put our time there.
But you are a citizen, not only of this nation, but of the world.
Exactly.
And what you do enhances, for the good, enhances
Or
the
not.
nation, the neighborhood, the world. And so you don't have to be a soldier or a president, you are simply a citizen of planet Earth.
All of those things that we nurture as we go down into our lives, our community, our family, all of those things affect our global health, I hope. And Tuesday is one of the things we do that changes our global health. Anything else on those issues? What are global issues that you spend time on?
Global hunger.
Global hunger? Do you read the newspaper? Do you watch the evening news? Are you informed? I mean, I think that is an attention to global health. Because if you ignore it, you're not paying attention to the things that maybe you say are important to you. What do you do for the environment? You enjoy it? And when you enjoy it, you don't want to throw trash in it.
Plant flowers and shrubs and into them in the fall and put them back.
Yes. You plant trees. You clean up.
Trees.
Recycle and compost.
You recycle and compost. Do you recycle everything? I mean, do you recycle appropriately? Don't put your recycling in plastic bags. All of those things are how we care for the environment. But also, we bring people into political offices that care for the environment too. Because it takes all of us to really change these things. I wish I'd had my PowerPoint presentation because I think there would have been more discussion. But if you are interested in this subject, and this is a little bit more written for church leadership, I think, than it was for me. But very interesting. There were chapters in here on nurturing and caring for the dying and end-of-life experiences, other subjects that I didn't get into today because I felt less equipped to do that. But the name of the book is Beyond the Offering Plate, A Holistic Approach to Stewardship. Adam Copeland is the editor. And I appreciate your patience with our visual presentation.
He was very good.
Yeah.
We're in charge of tech, you know. All right, if you have no more questions, thanks for coming.